Hey everyone, welcome to the most opinionated space podcast on the internet, Ad Astra.
The podcast where we talk about the intersection between space, policy, and technology.
I'm Jack.
And I'm Newton.
I have a Master's of Public Policy degree with a concentration in Science and Space Policy.
And I'm a PhD in Computer Science and an all-around tech geek.
All right. Before we forget, make sure you follow us on social media. That's, I guess, what we're going to be really pushing this week. So our Twitter is at @Astra_podcast. Our Facebook's @Astra. And I think we have an Instagram as well that is also at @Astra_podcast. So I guess, we're going to go straight into it today. I hope everyone had a great Eclipse week. If you were able to catch any of our live stream, thank you for tuning in. Otherwise, you can go rewatch some of it. It's all up on our Facebook page.
Yes, so before we get to our main topic, I just want to say our thoughts are with the folks in Houston and surrounding areas that have been impacted by Hurricane Harvey. For folks who are looking for places to donate, we'll have a list of websites up in the show notes, but sort of the big three that we've been looking into are the American Red Cross, which is sort of the first group people think of when giving after a disaster. It says that it's providing shelters for those displaced by Harvey, as well as doing blood donations and all of that. You can donate at redcross.org/HP/Harvey2. Global Giving, which is a charity crowdfunding site that is attempting to raise $2 million to be used exclusively for local relief and recovery efforts. You can find them at globalgiving.org. And Airbnb. The hospitality company is working to coordinate people in need of a place to stay with people willing to offer a free room. So just go to airbnb.com/disaster/Hurricane Harvey evacuees. Shout outs to the people in Houston and surrounding areas. So today we are going to, as Jack said, be talking about the Great American Eclipse. And we have a few guests on to talk with us. Last Monday, the DC Planetary Society made its way out to Nashville, Tennessee to witness the celestial event. And now we have Tom and Gerrit on the line, two members and volunteers at the Planetary Society, to chat with us and recap the event. Tom and Gerrit, how are you doing?
Great. Thanks for having us on.
Awesome, man. Thank you.
Of course, thanks for being on, taking some time on your very busy Monday nights, I'm sure, to talk about probably the coolest celestial event of our lifetimes. I mean, unless we live to see Halley's Comet, but even then it'll be dwarfed by the size of the moon, literally.
Right, and this was particularly a special event. The moon passed between the sun and the earth and blocked all or parts of the sun, depending on where you were, for up to about 3 hours from beginning to end, as viewed from particular locations. For this eclipse, the longest period of totality, which is what it's called, when the moon completely blocks the sun, was about 2 minutes and 40 seconds. This one was particularly special because the last time that the contiguous United States actually saw a total eclipse was back in 1979. And prior to this event, no total solar eclipse had been visible across the entire contiguous United States since June 1918. The Path of Totality touched about 14 states, and the rest of the U.S. just saw about a partial eclipse. I believe they were at about 80% here in Washington, D.C., but we ventured out to Nashville, Tennessee, which happened to be directly on the Path of Totality. And we were able to actually see the full total eclipse, which was pretty cool. So let's just do a go around, some initial thoughts on seeing the moment of totality. We'll just start right up front. We can start with you, Gerrit. What did you think?
Well, man, I thought it was, like you said, it's just one of those things that you can't get just any time, and I think it floored me academically up front to think that it was just going to be an undeniable physical demonstration of so many things that you kind of take respectable authorities' word for in science class. But the emotional impact of it was I don't know. It was so much more immediate and sudden than I could have expected. So the gradual light dimming of the partial eclipse phase just really suddenly, like a clap, switched over to complete darkness, and the entire light tone change. I think on the way back to the car afterwards, I made that joke to you about it. Was like Bob Ross was painting the world, and he switched from ochre to titanium white, just because the spectra coming out of the corona is just completely different from when you have direct sunlight. It was just it completely floored me, and I was glad to be with a bunch of people who kind of just heard mutterings in the background as everybody was like making awe noises. It was super special.
Absolutely. Tom, what about yourself? What were some of your initial thoughts?
Well, I think it was more of like after the fact that the chills started going down my spine, thinking about it. At the time, at least for me at that moment, it seemed, so quick. There's so much going on at once. There was so much to take in. Because, you're looking around, you hear the bugs starting to make noises, louder noises, more noises like you do normally hear at twilight. Even though
the bugs really got me.
Yeah. And observing the horizon for a moment and to see that 360 degrees twilight was really cool. And just the moment, there was so much at once, like, I don't want to forget it. I didn't even bother, pulling out my phone to take a picture, partly because I never really did master how to get it to behave itself for far away objects like that. So I just, I just tried to do what I could and just tried to remember what it looked like and try to stay in the moment long enough.
Sure.
But and like Gerrit said, it was fantastic being with the rest of you guys. It was a lot of fun. Really enjoyed it. It was a good idea to go, and I'm really glad I did. It was worth the 16 hours back.
Yeah, we paid a dividend as far as driving goes. Follow-up thought, since you were talking about, both of us mentioned that it was great to be a social event too, that it was kind of like you're there having your private moment with this enormous astronomical event, but you're also there with people that find it particularly interesting, obviously the Planetary Society members, but even just in general, like to me, the idea that I was looking up into the sky at a celestial object that at the same time, or within minutes left and right, millions of other Americans were staring up and looking at the same thing. And it was kind of nowhere near as heady, but it was almost like one of those, I remember where I was when the Apollo landing happened, or I remember, because you don't have a lot of those that are positive. A lot of people have I know when this catastrophe happened. But this was a positive thing that you can look back anytime and be like, hey, you remember that eclipse in 2017? What were you doing? And you can swap stories. It felt nationally social almost.
Absolutely.
Well, and not even nationally. I mean, it did touch some international communities. I know there were people in Canada and Mexico that I know that were also talking about just how, they were not in the path of totality, but they still saw a partial solar eclipse. And it's just one of those so very human events. I mean, I know we talked a lot about this when we were sort of gearing up for the eclipse, and then as we were sort of gearing down from it as well, was, imagine this was 15,000 years ago, and you had no idea this was going to happen, and then this the moon blocks out the sun. Just what sort of feeling that would evoke out of people at that time, and how we've grown as a society to not look at those as bad omens or as the coming of the end of days, but as a humanizing event, as something that brings us all together. I mean, there were millions of people across the United States. I think I saw something that there was like 40 million people.
Right. The conservative estimate is that there were about 20 million people alone who actually just watched it from the Path of Totality. And NASA even reported that during its live stream, which we'll post in the show notes, there were about 4.4 million people watching that live stream, watching a video of the eclipse from work. I mean, it was definitely a spectacle, definitely a sight to see. One of the things that, going back to what you were talking about, Jack, about a little bit of the history, we in some of the earliest writings that we know of, like we've shown that people have been paying attention to eclipses, or at least writing about them, since at least 5,000 years ago. I'm sure this goes back much further than that. But there are certainly petroglyphs in Ireland. I'm thinking of the Loughcrew Cairn megalithic monument that have drawings of solar eclipses dating all the way back to 3300 BC. This is an event that just drew awe in people. I mean, a partial eclipse is shocking enough just to see it get a little bit darker in the middle of the day for no reason, but to see what we saw when we were on that path of totality, I mean, I couldn't think of any more of an eloquent way to say this is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. That had to be my pause. I kept thinking about, like, for the last couple of days, like, what would I say what could I say during this? And I just remember right after we saw the sun get completely eclipsed, and just my jaw dropping. At no point could I ever have thought that I would be seeing exactly what we saw on that day. And we were definitely fortunate to get that opportunity.
Yeah.
But,
that historic bit is crazy, right? Like, we say that, and yet you don't always take the time to, like, stop and role play and put yourself in that position. But the thing that struck me is I realized that most of the context that lets us kind of think, oh, it's not that big a deal, and oh, people in the past were so paranoid and so superstitious, is because, one, we've got advance warning, which, people have been able to calculate these things for a long time. But the other piece of it that really floored me is the eye protection. So if you go back to any time when you didn't know to put on the equivalent of welding goggles, you would instinctually have looked away even during the partial phases. So I think we had this conversation on the 15 plus hour drive back, was like, if you were out,
it was more like 17, but
yeah,
okay.
for Convoy Bravo, we may have taken a couple of detours. It was good, scenic. But like, if you were out working in a field or walking downtown or whatever you were doing, anytime back in the day prior to really this century, even if you knew it was coming, you may have gotten the feeling that a big cloud had gone in front of the sun, and if you turned to look at it, you would have been damn near blinded and immediately looked away. So you would never have actually noticed that the reason the sun was dimmer was because something was in front of it until literally that sudden moment of totality. And then all of a sudden you've been like, wait, it just flipped off like a light switch and looked up. And man, it's hard if you didn't know what that was, astronomically speaking, hard to not go WTF.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things that, like, I don't know, Newton, I think you said it very well. Like, I still just don't have words for it necessarily. I mean, I keep trying to come up with the right romantic and poetic way to phrase how, just how freaking awesome this experience was. I'm trying to think. I think it was, Carl Sagan, was it, that said, people say that scientists can't be romantic or poetic. Well, this is proving their point, because we're just so in awe of how great these things are, and that these things are predictable.
Right.
That this is something we know about.
Yeah. What's interesting too is, is trying to explain it to people when you got back, because I'm sure each of you had at least one person ask the question, well, why'd you guys drive all the way out to Tennessee to see it? Or well, you can see it mostly from Washington, D.C. That's good enough.
No,
you guys get that question?
Events.
Yeah, exactly. It's not literally night and day, but close enough,
yeah,
right?
It's not a partial, but a little bit more of a partial. It is a completely different experience.
It's a whole different.
You could say it's a total solar eclipse. Whoa. But so then I guess that leads to the next question, and this is a yes or no question for everyone. Was it worth it?
Gerrit, you first.
So, as you know, Friday night or Sunday night, my answer may have been different. Yeah, no, it was even damn near 30 hours in a car round trip and all of that, but especially because we had the social layer on top of it. I mean, to go see that thing, you said yes or no, so I'm going to scale back. But the point is, on many, many fronts for many reasons, yes.
Tom?
Absolutely.
And I'm going to go with absolutely as well. And I am going to elaborate.
Yeah, you're allowed to. You're allowed
it's our
to.
Did you berate coworkers when you got back because they settled for the partial? Because I did.
Well,
I absolutely did.
Keep in mind, I work in the space community. All of my coworkers went to the Path of Totality.
I got in an argument with some of my coworkers because I asked them, "Hey, did you at least go to a window and watch some of it?" And they said, "No, we scheduled a meeting with so and so for that hour, and so we just went through that." And I was like, "You deliberately scheduled a meeting during the eclipse? You're a monster."
It was 100% worth the drive. And Gerrit, you were starting to talk about it. The social aspect of it was there too. Being able to share such a grand event with, I mean, we had a very special group of folks. I'm happy to say that. Special. But just to be special,
non-axe murdering folks,
non-axe murdering,
non-hatchet murdering folks,
which. If you didn't watch the live stream, you're not going to be in on this joke. So go watch the live stream so you're in on all these jokes.
Right. But yeah, to be there with people in general and having a sense of community about it, to witness and be in awe of such an amazing celestial event. Technically the Earth goes through celestial events all the time, but they're commonplace to us, or we don't even notice them. But for something like this, where something that we're so used to, our diurnal cycle is so used to, watching that change in an instant, and being able to share that experience and share something so beautiful. I've never seen anything more beautiful than the sun eclipsed by the moon on the Path of Totality. I'll say that right now. I mean, that was absolutely worth every bit of the, damn near 30 hours it took us to get there and back. So
I'm just going to have to second that. I guess I should answer my own question. Yeah, it was absolutely, totally 100% worth it. Yeah, I mean, I got back to my office, and there was only a few people who either were in the Path of Totality or pretty close to it. And, they were of the same opinion that it's just one of those things that, you think that the difference between 80% and 100% is only 20%, but I would say it was a completely separate event for us. I mean, just to be there. And yes, there's the social aspect of it too, which I think that harkens back to like why space is so great, that it can transcend all of these barriers and boundaries, both political and physical and geographic. But there's also just the fact that it was a syzygy, I guess is going to be my fancy word. The aligning
it's been your
of
favorite
three,
word all week.
It really has. I just use it like every other sentence when I'm talking about the eclipse. But yeah, syzygy is when three celestial bodies line up, and you think that happens so frequently, and in some instances it does. For the sun, moon, and Earth system. That it happens about every 18 months or so. But the Earth's 70% water. There's a lot of areas people don't live. So not everywhere gets a total solar eclipse like the one that we saw. It was so breathtaking and so once in a lifetime-y. I don't know if there's a word for that. Once in a lifetime-y. I'm going to create it right now. That like, I can't imagine not going to it. It was that impressive, and that I think breathtaking is a perfect word to describe it.
I found myself just on the drive back, kind of pondering, and I actually felt a little guilty because I was like, I knew this going in. I feel it more now, but I knew that going in, and I almost felt bad not trying harder to persuade other people to share that experience.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you talk about it being rare for all those. That was one of the fun parts of being in the DC Planetary Society groups. That little get together. That was one of the big things that I learned. Is just I hadn't really thought about how rare, even if the event is common, it can be rare to be able to see it on the Earth. But the other thing that just always boggles my mind is some of the good fortune. The way objects in our solar system are laid out, the fact that there is nowhere else in the solar system where there is another body close enough that it can so sufficiently fill the sky that it blocks the sun completely. It's the only place in the solar system where you can see a total eclipse of the sun.
Right, the only planet.
Right,
Yes,
it boggles my mind that that's the case. I mean, what good fortune.
what good fortune! It's like we're under all the right circumstances. Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I mean, have any of you seen a partial eclipse before? Because partial eclipses are obviously much more common. Being on the path of totality for a regular eclipse is, I mean, it's a bit more commonplace. But have any of you, do you guys remember as a kid seeing a partial eclipse at all?
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah, I remember in elementary school, it was, we actually went outside, but they told us not to look at it because they didn't have glasses to hand out. But it got kind of dark, and it was really kind of cool.
Yeah. Did you get to
That's
do the
about
whole
all I vaguely remember.
Did you get to do the whole pinhole camera thing and all that?
No, they weren't. The teachers weren't that sharp. They, and it was elementary school, and yeah, and I didn't know anything about it. But it was kind of cool because things did get kind of dark. I don't know what percentage it was, but it was enough that you could notice a difference. It was pretty interesting, but it just what I vaguely remember, that was probably 30 years ago, maybe. At this point,
I wasn't going to make you say it, Tom.
Yeah, we're not trying to. We're not an ageist show. Some of us are a little bit older than others, but that's okay. It just means you've seen more eclipses.
Absolutely.
Because this was. Yeah, I mean, this was my first eclipse of any kind. I mean, the last time there was an eclipse across the U.S. when I was alive was in '94.
Right.
It passed, and it basically passed right over my house. But I was all of a year old, maybe not even a year old, so I do not remember it.
Yeah, I
the slightest.
I remember being 8 and trying to do the pinhole camera thing with my teachers for that one, for the 1994 one. But I mean, it was a partial eclipse. There was only so much activity that you were gonna get out of it. So. Yeah, let's kind of walk. I'm just kind of thinking of recapping the eclipse. So we get there to this park in Tennessee. It's around what would you say, around 11 o'clock a.m. I think we got there about an hour before after eating a crazy heavy breakfast. And just remember it being super, I just remember it being super bright out. It was a clear, perfect day, barely a cloud in the sky. So we kind of lucked out. There was less traffic than we thought there would be. Like, at least while we were in Tennessee.
And the southbound leg.
Yeah, on the southbound leg. So, yeah, and I just remember a few people coming to the park, and before we knew it, there were probably, what would you say, like 30, maybe 40 people there total in the entire park.
On our side of the park, I'd say, yeah. I think
there were bigger city
across
events.
all. Yeah, well, remember Gallatin. So we were in Hendersonville, so just a little bit outside Nashville. But in Gallatin, they told us on the website, they said, "Do not come. There are too many people here. All the lots are full."
We were lucky enough to stake out sort of a almost a private viewing experience with maybe a few people that we let into the VIP. And then at about 11:58 a.m., the sky got darker slowly, very slowly. We started noticing the moon coming across the sun. Um, Everyone started throwing up their glasses immediately, and we actually had access to a telescope with a solar filter. A friend of the Planetary Society brought a tiny telescope with a solar filter, and we were actually able to check out the sun and even see a few sunspots, but witness the moon slowly coming across the sun. And Gary, you were able to capture a few decent pictures of even the partial, right?
I did. I lucked out doing the poor man's trick of carefully putting the glasses in front of your iPhone camera lens, and going through the process of, oh, that's right, I have manual exposure settings. And I remember like 30, 40 minutes into it, someone was like, oh, that's right, we should turn off our flash because the phone's going to think it's dark and the flash is going to hit the glasses. Sure enough, all of our pictures got better after that. So I got...
right, I think Nicole figured that one out.
No, you were usually able to get like a cool starburst, but the real trick was to get the discrete shape of, the disk of the sun with a clear, disk of the moon getting cut out of it. And that was pretty hard. I only got one that I would say was actually a keeper with my phone on that.
Yeah. I got one when it was probably about 70, maybe 75%, 75% covered. So, yeah, but we were there for about maybe an hour and 10 minutes before we really started seeing changes that were more apparent, without you having to look directly at the sky. We started noticing noticing the area around us getting slightly darker. Some of us thought that it's just sort of our eyes playing tricks on us, or us just fooling ourselves into thinking that something's changing. But there definitely was some serious change after about an hour 10 minutes.
It was what I noticed more so was the hue of things had changed. The trees seemed a little bit duller, like the whole color palette seemed a little off, and seemed to get more and more off before it really started getting noticeably darker overall.
Right, and that's when you started hearing those evening noises. You started hearing not necessarily crickets chirping, but you started hearing bugs start to go a little stir crazy. Even when it started to get slightly darker out there, and the darker it got, the more crazy it got. You even started hearing some of the animals in the woods next to us sounding off, which is a total natural reaction and is probably what a lot of humans sounded like a few thousand years ago already. Maybe
only it sounded more like screaming.
Yeah.
As opposed to just, it's nighttime now. I'm a nighttime bug. I'm going to come out now. It was more, the world is ending and everything's horrible.
Right. So that's when there was this weird combination because the entire time we'd been looking through our glasses at the sun, just periodically staring up and staring and then talking to each other and then staring back up and then talking to each other, because it was just a fascinating event. But really, when it hit about that after 80% mark, that's when things really started to turn up, probably at about 1:15 in the afternoon, and then faster than it had seemed before. That's when we started seeing the sun going away even more and more. It almost increased at maybe not an exponential rate, but much faster than it was before. And at a certain point, probably at about 1:20, 1:25, that's when we started to see almost full coverage and Bailey's beads. What were your thoughts on that?
I mean, I'll go first on that. I mean, it was because I was looking at through so the people that had brought the telescope was Gary and Sharon Appleman from Flower Mound, Texas. So if you're listening, shout out to you for bringing an awesome piece of equipment for us to use. But I was very fascinated with the valleys and craters that you could see on the edge of the moon when you're looking through the solar telescope that were being illuminated by the sun that it was passing in front of. And like then being able to see, you know, Bailey's beads, the point at which just these little streams of light were coming through was just the biggest, I guess, indicator of just how dynamic the moon really is. It's not this just circle in the sky that, you know, comes and goes every so often, but it's a real place that has craters and geography the same way that the Earth does. Maybe not created in the same way, but it's a dynamic world, as with all other places in the solar system. And it gives you that bit of perspective that we're not alone in having a very interesting place to inhabit. And we could eventually be inhabiting more of these places, but I think that was my like immediate thought with Bailey's beads. I'll let I think Tom, do you want to chime in here on something?
I was gonna say yes. The moon too has been bombarded with a number of asteroids and comets in its earlier days.
Yeah, well, one thing that was really fascinating to me, one of the things was that, you know, you were actually seeing the sun's atmosphere, those white wispy streaks you saw that we could see coming out from around that black disk of the moon in front of the sun. It, you know, that was part of the atmosphere that I'm used to seeing on my Facebook feed from NASA in all different wavelengths and things. But it was so neat to see it with your own eyes. It was just unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you though, Jack. Actually witnessing the topography is really what got to me. You know, I'd known from, you know, just looking into it before that sort of rugged topography of the moon is kind of what causes Bailey's beads and to appear the way that it does. But it was very interesting, and yeah, we had great fortune with them having that solar, well, that telescope with the solar filter on it, so you could really see it. It was very apparent.
Yeah, that telescope was really, really awesome. I'm going to make sure I have my own for the next time.
Yeah.
2024.
2024, absolutely.
Lots of time to save up and learn how to use it.
Yeah.
We'll get a lot of experience between now and then.
Yeah. Did I see Jeremy hop on?
Yes. So I think, Gerrit, unless do you have anything that you want to add to the
specifically the Bailey's beads
to this
bit?
Yeah.
Specifically Bailey's beads and talking about the topography of the moon and how it impacted our viewing.
No, well, I mean, that's the thing, right? Even we had the good fortune of having that scope, and that lets you see some features of the sun, but really, even as magnificent as the total eclipse was, you know, you still, with a human eye, can only see so much of the amazing topography of the sun, right? Like, you just can't pick out a lot of that with the visible wavelengths. So one of the more dramatic parts to see is that, and I know when I just go out in my backyard with my little 4-incher, you know, that's one of the things I love about the moon the most anyways, is if you look right at the terminator, you know, where the dark side and the light side of the moon meet so harshly because there's no atmosphere to diffuse the light, you see basically a line, like a topographical line on a map. You can see the ups and downs of mountains and valleys and trenches and things like that. And so in the same way, when you looked right at the the black disk of the moon, when you had the telescope, you had the good fortune to be able to see close enough to pick out, literally looking on edge at the moon. And it's the greatest elevation that you can see with a human eye of the relief of the moon. And it really was pretty stunning.
Yeah. So like you said, Newton, Jeremy Davis has joined the call. People familiar with the show will remember Jeremy from our Humans to Mars episode from, what episode was that? That was like episode 12 run, episode 25, by the way. This is a great, 25th episode, kind of a big milestone for us. But yeah, Jeremy, I guess, to boil down what we had just previously talked about, and just have your you ready to answer the questions, I got 3 questions for you.
Sure.
How did you like the eclipse? What was your favorite part of the eclipse, and was it worth it?
So I'm going to answer the last question first and say, even though I did a huge chunk of the driving in getting down there and getting back, it was absolutely worth it. It was worth every single second of the 2 minutes and 30 seconds that we had. And I can't wait for the next one. It's really, I guess this leads into my answer to the second question there. It's so hard to pick any one specific aspect of it, because the way I've been describing it to people, people at work who didn't have the chance to go, or my friends here that didn't join us on the road trip, is just that it's not just a visual experience. It's this full sensory experience of seeing something that doesn't happen anywhere else in the solar system happen. It's so hard. Honestly, one of the things that's most visceral that I don't think I'm ever going to forget is how I stopped feeling the sun on my skin. It was 1:30 in the afternoon. We all know what's going to happen, and then just you stop feeling the sun on your skin. It was hot. It was very hot. We had a lot of water. We were standing out there, and just suddenly it's like, oh, this is, because it's one thing to look and to see and to take it in, and I can't wait until 2024, and I'm going to travel to see more after that. But that's one of the things that I didn't expect, is having that really visceral, tangible element to something that's literally thousands of miles away from me. Yeah, it really is difficult to describe, because it's one of these things that occupies all of your senses save for, taste. And I'm really glad I can't taste the sun.
Well, I think Sunny D would disagree with that.
They don't pay me.
Wow.
Jack, I set you up for that joke. You weren't supposed to go for it.
I went for it. I went for the marketing ploy.
But Jeremy dove into it a little bit. I was just kind of walking us through the timeline of the eclipse, and I think everyone had just had just finished talking about Bailey's beads. But about 1:27 in the afternoon. 1:27 and 25 seconds, according to NASA, in Nashville, Tennessee. The moon completely eclipses the sun. What are your thoughts right at that moment? Gerrit, we'll start with you.
I'm going to be honest. I'm not prepared. Not to answer the question, that was the first thought that went through my head. And it's, I think we've all kind of said it, right? As we all had an intent. I think most of us wanted to share it technologically, but we all knew that was secondary to experiencing it. So I had, my phone was in my pocket. I was prepared to just look with my, eyes and an open mind and an open heart. But the second that it happened, it was sort of jaw dropping. I'm listening to everybody kind of making these noises, and I'm gasping, literally gasp for air as like Jeremy was saying, my skin goes cold and the light changes, and I just kind of, and then I just kind of went, I should have meditated, or I should have set my camera up better or something. Because I as soon as it started, it was so awesome that I was already lamenting how short it was. I was like, this is going to end in a few minutes, and that sucks, because this is amazing. Which sounds bad, but I mean it in an awesome way. I was so awed, and yet very aware of how transient it was. That it was a very perishable, special moment.
Sure. Tom, how about yourself? Bailey's beads go away, disappear, and the moon completely covers the entire disk of the sun. How are you feeling at that time?
Yeah, very similar to what Gerrit was saying and what I alluded to and when I was mentioning my initial reactions was that, it's like, oh crap, there it is, it's happening, because there's all this anticipation, it's like, oh, we're gonna have a total eclipse, months in advance, and we planned the trip. We was like, oh man, things are disappearing. We got to get some lodging quick, and the big drive down, and how sort of tired and short-tempered people were getting, and but the next day there, and you're there, and all of a sudden there it is. Like, I'll be damned, that's exactly what it looks like. It's just like the pictures, but you can't compare it to being there in person. And like Jeremy said, that you don't feel the sun anymore. And even though it was really hot, I mean, it was over 90 degrees in the shade there. It was a really hot day. And you're just there, and it's like, oh, the sun's gone. And there's just this really fascinating, almost perfectly black disk with the sun's atmosphere just shining in a bright white light, not the yellow that we're used to seeing the sunlight filtering through our atmosphere. But it was just really fascinating. It was just remarkable. And it's like, oh crap, it's already here. Oh no.
That's Spock's initial reaction as well. Fascinating.
Fascinating.
Maybe a slight eyebrow raise, slightly.
I think the Eclipse deserved a full eyebrow raise.
Yeah.
That was one full eyebrow raise from me.
Here's an eyebrow raise for you, everyone. Thank you.
It's a quality eyebrow raise, though, like a full-throated.
I think
full body,
full bushy,
full foreheaded. In the comments of this episode, please list below the right adjective to use for a full eyebrow raise.
I mean, I clearly had a people's eyebrow going on at the time. So.
But yeah, I think something that everyone here has touched on, and Jeremy will I want more of your input too, of just. It was just this thing that, you've seen pictures of it, you've seen video of it, you've seen it from all around the world. But then to experience it was just so different and so unique, I think, that I don't know. I just keep going back to this. I'm just no words that can describe just how amazing and breathtaking this experience was. And then to also experiencing it with you people. It was, I think
you and me had a very emotional moment.
We did.
You guys did.
So I remember when it happened, I saw it, I saw the eclipse, the total eclipse, like, immediately. And I was in awe. And then my initial reaction after that was I looked around to see who else was looking and their expressions, that it was such a human experience. I keep going back to those words, human experience, that, I had to see how everyone else was experiencing it, how they were feeling and what they were emoting. Because everyone was very clearly moved by it. And it was a beautiful human experience to have with all of you. And I'm gonna get gushy here, but I wouldn't have wanted to do it with anybody else.
Well, I'm glad you opened the gushy well, because because I do.
All right, is this the part of the show where we do this?
I want to confess it to the world. So to all the listeners, admittedly, I'm a little mushy when it comes to space stuff. Like, I'm the guy that every time I watch Apollo 13 and they say cleared the tower, I gotta sniff a little bit, but I did.
Room gets a little dusty.
No, I panned my head around after a couple seconds of soaking it in, and was marveling at people's mouths agape, and I think everybody was trying to smile at the same time. You just have so many feelings, but it didn't take long, maybe 30 seconds before I found myself just kind of long blinking and staring at it and literally getting a little tear jerky, and it's hard to describe, but you're right. It's so outside of the realm of normal experience. And to me, it's bare eyes are seeing something on a scale that you intellectually appreciate, but you just can't grasp it usually, and now you're seeing this thing that is millions of times bigger than the Earth being blocked by a thing that is, a substantial fraction of the size of the Earth, and all of them at, literally astronomical unit distances. I didn't feel guilty at all that hit me kind of in the gut, in the heart, in the feels.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because the entire time that, well, particularly when the partial eclipse was happening, just running through my head was, this is the sequence of celestial events that are happening. This is, what's happening with the orbits, just some of the more science-based elements of it. Then as the diamond ring and Bailey's beads started to come in, there was a little bit of awe, but I was still just thinking about, oh, look at the lunar craters on the surface and blah, blah, blah. As soon as totality hit, there was a stream of just raw emotion. I'm not, like, I don't know if I could describe it any better than that. I was it just hit me that I was observing this event that, one, I'd never seen before, two, most human beings have never seen before, and three, is happening on a scale and it's an event that I'm seeing with it's an event that I'm seeing with my own two eyes on an astronomical scale. Like that, there are very few times in your lifetime when that will happen. In fact, and I may be wrong here, but this may be the one event that we can really experience where we can see that kind of change on an astronomical scale. And yeah, just the raw emotion of that just kind of hit me all at once. I'm not gonna lie, it was a little dusty out there. I might have teared up a little bit.
Someone was just cutting all these onions out there.
It was weird.
It got to me,
Like, poor timing,
honestly.
Man. No, but yeah, honestly, so yeah, probably about like 45 or so seconds in, like, I just get this realization, and I always have to make a comment like this. I'm like, I have the dumbest look on my face right now, and like that's how happy I am. Right?
Yeah, you were terrified of somebody getting a photo of you.
I just felt like I had to comment on it because I thought it was pretty funny that I was that awestruck, because I can't think of any time in my life where I've been that awestruck just witnessing something happening. And
the best way I can sum that up myself is just, now I know why you're considered a god if you go back in time and predict an eclipse. That makes complete sense. Right?
Well, if you can go back in time to begin with, you're already sort of a demigod, I think. But
usually you go back in time because of snacks. But anyway.
Yeah, it happened. Jeremy, we're not going to talk about that anymore.
Quit bringing it up. I'm embarrassed.
Quit bringing it up. It happened twice.
Yeah. Right. But I mean, really, it's one of these things that's just, there's no one way. I heard somebody try and describe it is, imagine experiencing an earthquake and then trying to explain an earthquake to someone who's never had that happen. Just suddenly the ground is shaking and everything's loud, and then 2 minutes later it stops. And it's like, imagine looking up and the sun is there, and then it starts getting dark, and then you look up again and it's gone.
Yeah. Those of us in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, many of us experienced an earthquake for the first time a few years ago, and I don't know if I can compare that to what we saw. It's close. I mean, it's close.
It's the closest thing.
Yeah, it is close.
Just that impression of I don't know what this is.
Yeah. No,
and
I
you have
hear
to search your head for
that
it.
feeling. Yeah, of just, what is this? I've heard of this thing before. Like, could it be that? Is that possible? Mm-hmm. I can see that.
I would agree with that. I was just on the 5th floor of a 10th floor building right in Old Town Alexandria, and that earthquake just hit, and it was completely unnerving, because it's like the floor started moving, and so you go to reach out instinctively for something to hold on to that's not moving, but the windowsill that was part of the wall and the outside window and my desk to the other side of me, they were all moving too. There was no, whatever was going to happen was going to happen, and there wasn't a damn thing you were going to do about it. You were along for whatever ride was waiting for you.
Yeah.
And I can imagine people with people who didn't know about eclipses ancient folks to look up and see that, that would be equally terrifying, even though nothing was moving. It was still like a fundamental frame of reference.
But to think that a moment of darkness is coming, and I don't know if this is going to go away. Right? Think about that.
Right.
Even though it's just for several minutes, to think for several minutes that the sun is gone is a frightening thing.
So that's that bit about that totality is not just a little bit more of partiality, right? Because it so completely blocks the sun that you lose any sense of motion. Like when we were down to just a tiny little crescent of the sun, we were all kind of, I think some of us were even counting down, like you had a clear sense of the motion, but when it's blocked out, it's just completely blocked out. And until that light switch flips back on, you wouldn't have any idea how long it would last.
Yeah, no kidding. So, all right. So, last couple of questions here. We'll start with this one. What was your favorite part of the road trip aside from the eclipse? Garrett, we'll start with you. You just happen to be at the top of this list on our screen.
So the correct answer to this question is the Ad Astra live stream, but go ahead with your answers.
No.
Aside from things that were as awesome as the totality and the Ad Astra live stream.
This is where I say Game of Thrones, and we have to make Jack sign off because he's not watching, right? I had to throw that out.
All right, bye guys. This is great. Ad Astra as always.
But was last week's episode that good?
Do I have to give an astronomy themed answer? Like a space answer? Or can I give just a hanging out answer?
No, just in general, hanging out.
Well,
all of that.
Then definitely it was sitting at a diner at Odark 30, looking rudely across 6 other people that had no sense of humor about it, and reciting like the first 30 minutes of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles with Newton. It was just like we were so into it, and I started looking around, and everyone else was like rolling their eyes and groaning, and I was like, I should stop, but I'm having too much fun.
Right. Jose Canseco bat. Tell me, you didn't pay money for this.
You gotta know what a crumpet is before you can play
all right.
I thought I signed up for an astronomy podcast, not a Teenage Mutant Ninja.
Yes,
I asked before I provided that anecdote.
All right, Tom, it's your turn. We're done with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
I think aside from the eclipse itself, I think my favorite part was just the camaraderie of it, because particularly in my situation, I've done very, very few road trips in my life, and it was usually during my childhood and into high school years to take like a family vacation, like from Pennsylvania to Maine, like we used to do a few times growing up. So it was so cool, and that some of you like Gerrit and a few others that weren't able to make it to the stream tonight, I had just met like a couple weeks previously in person. Or actually, no, I first met Gerrit like one time before then, which was after the March for Science.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And I had just met Katie like a few weeks prior to the road trip, but I didn't. The only trepidation I had was how long the trip was going to be, not who I was with, and nothing about the trip changed that. I mean, I had a really good time. I think everybody did. We all got along really well. And I never had any concerns or just like a general nervousness, like, oh, everyone's together. I don't know. It was none of that. It never even occurred to me. I was the only little trepidation I had, like I said, was the logistics of the trip, how long it would take, what shape this Airbnb place would be in, and all that sort of thing. That was it. I mean, I really enjoyed being with everyone. It was awesome. Really, really made it extra special.
It's at this point that I have to point out that Tom was riding in the coolest vehicle of the convoy. No, we were not.
Yeah, he wasn't in my car.
You were not a road warrior.
As a driver, I was neither the road warrior nor the host of a live streaming podcast from inside of a sometimes moving vehicle.
Hey. When we were going down there, we were an often moving vehicle.
Yeah, we kept good pace back when I was leading the charge down there.
I just really liked literally rolling down the window in full stop traffic and explaining how people could tune in to the live cast. I was like, no, we're literally recording Ad Astra right now, and I gave them the website. So if there are two people who are listening now because they had somebody do the Great Poupon thing,
God bless.
That was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah,
Shout out to those two people.
Gerrit
Right
did
now.
that. It was someone right across from us in the passing lane that we were in a point where we're stuck in traffic. He's like, that car right in front of us. They're streaming now. That was really cool. And yet, if you folks are listening, that is totally awesome. Good seeing you again.
For me, the drive down, so in my car, on the way down, neither of the other two passengers drove, and on the way back, neither of the other two passengers drove. So I put in a full 12 hours getting down there, 15 getting back. So I was definitely antsy and drained, but the Eclipse really refilled my spirit. And I may or may not have been screaming Mad Max quotes after the 8th hour
Shiny
on,
and
on both
chrome.
accounts. Well, have you know, the roads in West Virginia are really high quality. We had to detour, and honestly, those roads were they put their tax money to good use.
And it's 70 miles an hour, so that means you can get away with 80 something.
Well, you could get away with 80 something, or you could make better time, but that's neither here nor there. I'm a road warrior. That's all I have to say about that.
I was just gonna say, one of my favorite parts, aside from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle quotes, was beating the Road Warrior multiple times in On the Road Rock Paper Scissors. That was good.
Yeah, you see, I'm focused on the driving, not the competitive. It's like chess boxing, you know. There's driving, rock paper scissors. Yeah. I'm really good at the driving part, but I suck at the rock paper scissors. Newton, you
okay.
Look, I was telling you the whole time. Come on now. Yeah,
I think Newton was vying for the title of Road Warrior.
Yeah,
with some of that driving.
Yeah,
he tried.
I was right behind you the whole time, Jeremy. What do you got?
Not the way back, but that's neither here nor there.
But yeah, I mean, just the overall camaraderie of it, just being able to, actually, I think I'd only met Gerrit once or twice, as well as most of the rest of the people that I'd known for a little while. But just being able to spend that much time with you guys, not just one event here for an hour or another event here for an hour, and actually kind of sharing in all of these experiences with you guys, and kind of being able to going back to just nerding out with you guys watching Game of Thrones. That's what really made the trip worthwhile. Yes, I'd seen one of the most awe-inspiring things that I'd ever seen in my lifetime, and potentially ever will see in my lifetime, unless I actually go to space. But being there with you guys made that entire trip worthwhile. So, Jack, did you comment? What was your favorite part of the road trip besides the Eclipse?
And I'm gonna have to second that. I would say the real Eclipse was the friends we made along the way.
Oh, all
right, thanks, Nicole.
And that's the show, folks. Have a great day.
Thanks, Nicole.
No, I said the joke first, and then Nicole stole it from me. Nicole's not here to defend herself, so I'm going to take credit for the joke.
Okay.
But yeah, I think it was the people that we met there. It was, of course, you guys.
That's right. Shout out to Haley, by the way, one of our newest listeners.
Yeah. Haley, Corey, Douglas, Omar, and Oren. So shout out to the five of you. Thank you for partaking in the Ad Astra live stream from the Path, and then also just being all around cool people who came out from all over the place. There was a couple from Dallas there. You guys were all over the place, but it was the people we met, the memories we made, and the eclipses watched. I think those were my top three things, maybe even in that order. Well, no, the Eclipse was top. Don't, I won't lie. The Eclipse was definitely.
I really like you guys, but the Eclipse was. Eclipse was
You
way
can't
up
compete
there.
with all. You can't compete with the whole planet. You can't.
No. So one last question before we get out of here. What are you guys thinking about for next time? 2024, April 2024 will be the next time that we see a total solar eclipse in the US. I believe this one's going to go from basically the Texas, like Dallas, Texas area, and south of that, obviously, all the way up to Maine. What are you guys thinking about? 7 years.
Oh man, I've got a two-parter. My part one is what would be the coolest one-time experience. We kept talking about how cool it'd be to see it from way up above. Getting on high ground over flat terrain or something, so you could see the shape of the shadow and see the shadow racing towards you would be amazing. So doing like Alaska Airlines and a couple other airlines do charter flights to go intercept it at the earliest possible point. So that would be amazing. But what I would miss
That'd be
there
really
would be
cool.
the social, because I'm not going to get all my friends to buy uber expensive plane tickets.
Yeah.
So I'm going
would.
super sappy and saying I hope that through the Planetary Society and people like you that we actually have a little bit of a reunion. Like if half of our 2017 group got together again to go see it in 2024, that would be really cool.
That'd be amazing. Yeah, absolutely.
We'll need
Absolutely.
T-shirts for it at that point.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
That would be almost mandatory.
Yeah. Tom, you got any plans?
No, other than my somewhat half tongue-in-cheek Facebook post I had made a few days ago saying it's never too late to plan.
I saw that.
Yeah.
That was the inspiration for this question, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, well, you're welcome. I wish I had a more cohesive answer.
Yeah. Hurry up, you only got 7 years.
Basically, well, yeah, I mean, 7 years, all kinds of crazy things can happen, but I would definitely make it a point to see it and would certainly hope that we'd all, be able to stay in touch, even if we don't end up in the same, if we still don't all live in the DC area, it would still be cool to be, to stay in touch, remain good friends, and try to meet up at some location, like Gerrit said, where, if we could figure out a good place to get some high elevation and get that aspect of it. Because now that we've seen it, now we need to get it from see a different aspect of it now.
Yeah, I know.
Though even if we couldn't, it would still be awesome.
I know. Is the sequel going to be as good? Who knows?
I understand they're borrowing heavily from the previous plot, so I don't know.
Just do the same thing over again.
so
It always works.
So it's
Yeah,
like
just
it's like
that's
The Force Awakens and A New Hope, right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh no!
Back to our if no one, again, if you did not watch the live stream, you're going to need to watch it, because Newton and I we just watched all of the Star Wars films. Well, all the good ones, at least.
All the ones that matter.
And
Yes.
all the ones that matter. And we just sort of it went from a space podcast to an entirely like Star Wars theory and physics
I
podcast.
want to be clear that
It was a
didn't
Star Wars
stop.
review. It was a
That
Star.
didn't stop with the live stream, because I vividly remember like downtown Nashville listening to a live band rocking out, drinks in hand, and we get stopped by a group next to us who kind of goes, Are you having an in-depth conversation about the nature of the projectile or energy discharge differences between the Death Star and Starkiller Base? And we were like, yeah, that's exactly what we're doing.
That was the
You don't do that
conversation,
on a
everyone.
Tuesday night?
That was priceless.
This isn't your Tuesday.
Oh God. So yeah.
So
Honest to
Jeremy,
God, I do
what's
actually.
your?
Yeah. This honestly came to me maybe half an hour after the eclipse was over. I just had this realization that we were checking the map of where it was going to be. Just as soon as this one was over, it's like, where's the next fix? And so a friend of mine who he and I, back when we were still in college, we would go and hike in Shenandoah at least once a month, sometimes twice. We'd drive out there, and we were both huge national park buffs, and we love it. And he and I both want to hike the Appalachian Trail, which if you're doing it in quick fashion can take about 3 months. And I can't imagine a more magical idea than starting hiking down in Georgia and finishing up in Maine in time for the eclipse, just hiking the entire spine of the Appalachians. Only problem with that is that Maine's climate is, to put it lightly, cloudy.
Yeah.
But still be worth it. I just feel like it'd be worth it just for the shot of spending 3 months hiking in the wilderness and then emerging into a national park up there just to see the eclipse sitting in the middle of nowhere.
I'd have to look at the map, but could you go the other way?
I wouldn't want to hike to Texas. That'd be a bad idea.
Yeah.
Rattlesnakes, spiders,
Dehydration.
Dehydration, yeah.
Excessive hydration.
It's true. So I totally would be down for that idea if you ever got that together. Otherwise, just kind of like, Gerrit or Tom said, getting together once again with whatever becomes of this planetary society that we have going on here. I would love to get together with a bunch of people who love space, love talking about space in the most casual of ways, to the point, like Gerrit said, we're talking about the science and politics of Star Wars while we're in the middle of a bar listening to live bands. There would be nothing like experiencing that with you guys. These were the optimal conditions I could think of for the eclipse. It wasn't just the weather. It was about being with this group. So yeah, I would love to do something like this again. So
yeah,
Jack, did you answer that question?
I have not answered the question. I'll put the capstone on it. I don't really care where I go see the next eclipse, so long as I'm with the people I love and talking about the things I care about. So
yeah,
whether that's Dallas, Texas, or middle of nowhere, Maine, it doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
We need better walkie-talkies for next time, though.
Like we're going to talk from Texas to Maine.
Yeah, some big long-range ones.
Yeah.
That's my
thing called a
mention
telephone
for the best part of driving.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you can't just press a button with the telephone.
Right.
You have to press several buttons.
Right. Yeah, it's way too much. I don't think that technology is ever
continuous. And
yeah.
Yeah, I'll just pull out
too
my
much
funding now.
Yeah.
Pull out my seed money now.
I'm gonna end this with we talked about basically poetry and being able to adequately explain the eclipse, and this one is from the poet Archilochus. He's one of the ancient Greeks, and he spoke of the total solar eclipse back on April 6th, the year 647 BC. He said, quote, "There is nothing beyond hope, nothing that can be sworn impossible, nothing wonderful, since Zeus, father of the Olympians, made night from midday, hiding the light of the shining sun, and sore fear came upon men." That is probably one of the better ways that's much better than saying this eclipse was awesome.
Oh yeah, a lot better.
Yeah.
Well, I will end. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say thank you guys for joining us. We'd love to have you guys on. And really, we'd love to have you guys on in the future as well. You guys are great to talk to. I think it's great talking space with you guys. So yeah, maybe we'll coordinate something in the future.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, maybe something bigger that also includes the other half of the party that was not able to make the recording tonight.
The no-shows.
One day, maybe.
Definitely. They would have been cool to have them on. We should work something out.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. But once again, just going back to what we were saying at the beginning, make sure you guys reach out to organizations that are trying to help the people down in Houston. Some folks are going through some hard times right now. I've heard a bunch about people's houses being washed away and so on and so forth. So make sure to give to the American Red Cross, Global Giving, Airbnb. We will post those links both on our Facebook website as well as in the show notes for this episode. But you guys have been listening to the Eclipse episode, or is that what we're titling this, Jack? I thought you had a separate title.
Coverage from the Path of Totality.
Coverage from
I
the
don't know,
Path
that sounds cooler.
All right. We'll come up with something a bit cooler.
Yeah. Hey. All right. Anyway. So thanks to all of our guests, Gerrit, Tom, and Jeremy, for coming on. Thank you to everyone who helped make our trip possible. I can't wait for the next one, and I can't wait for next week's episode of the Ad Astra podcast. So as always, I'm Jack.
And I'm Newton.
Ad Astra.